Hello all, and welcome to the sixth part of the Quality Assurance Engineering series. This is me, George Pligoropoulos, and this is my LinkedIn profile if you want to know a bit more about me and also find the rest of the videos. QAs, please leave chaos behind and prioritize. Today we're going to talk about what QA does and how to prioritize this whole thing. And we have here a funny quote about prioritizing that sounds way too important for something that just means figuring out which of your to-do list items you're going to ignore for the foreseeable future. But usually this is very true because subtraction is much more difficult than addition, right? When you need to, what are you going to ignore? If you have a list, you need to think of what you're going to ignore. Addition is much more easy, right? We're going to do this and we're going to do extra this part and this part and this part, and when you're building something. But in order to prioritize and say, which ones of these we're going to do first and which to leave for the future, you really have to think. And this is also, a marketing trick that, for example, they use the salesperson use when you're trying to buy a car. You usually go to buy a car, and you have there someone saying this is the full price with everything included inside, and now you have to think what you remove. Apart from being this a pain that you're removing something for something that's like the full package, and you also need to think what you're going to remove. You're not going to remove your air condition, for example, but you might remove your radio if you don't want to hear music. You might, choose like that. So subtraction is much more difficult. And let's go first of all and see what the QA helps. So let's take it step by step and say that you have some business requirements after some refinement that has done. So the business requirements are kind of finalized. This usually includes the design to be finalized as well, in order not to write scenarios and then have design change and then rewrite them, etc. And so the first thing that the QA will do is to write the scenarios as briefly or as in any extension that the time allows him. And also the second part here, gathering questions for product people. This is very important because as you write the scenarios, you actually run the application in your head, and you're ending up in some things that are not certain from the business requirements, and you actually want to to gather the questions and clarify them with whoever product people here is whoever has the ownership for the business requirements. Could be product owner, product manager, project manager, even whoever has this. Now the second long arrow here that you see is that you optimize the scenarios, but not you as the QA. The optimization comes with the help of the developers, because the developers can help you two ways, as I'm explaining here. They can help you to expand the scenarios because they know that as they were doing some refactorings, etc., a lot of code has been changed, or they might have updated the library. So they're telling you like to go and expand your scenarios as much as possible, perhaps to cover the areas that they know that they have messed up. They have messed with that the business requirements are not clarifying for these areas to be affected, but sometimes things are interconnected in the code and you cannot avoid that. So they're helping you to expand, and they're helping you to also shrink your scenarios, because they might tell you that testing in dimensions where do not make a difference. For example, they might have implemented some network requests, and an extreme example is for you to be testing if it is between dark and white theme. This doesn't make sense, but it would make sense if you were testing the dimension of having good interconnection, bad interconnection, and finally have like no interconnection at all. This would be more relevant. So they're helping you to not expand in areas that you shouldn't, because there might be a single, for example, a single root code that affects a lot of areas, so you don't need to test all of them. So if you test any of them, it matters the same, for example. So basically, you optimize scenarios. When I say you is all the team together, like QAs and engineers, software engineers, and basically this is one of the hardest things to accomplish, since you have to optimize the scenarios. It means a near collaboration with between developers and QAs, and this is non-trivial if you're firstly introducing this, and this might take some time for the engineers, even the senior engineers, to get used to of doing this. But this has huge benefits because actually it prevents defects. When the engineers read the scenarios, they know what to do, and the defects are prevented. And so here you have next the actual development, let's say the actual development phase. And as software engineers are developing the actual source code for the product, um, you're also building the automated scenarios. And here I'm mentioning minimum 2 days per sprint, which could be, from the, let's say, 10 working days. And if you have a 2 week sprint, like minimum 2 days to be spent on, as a rule of thumb, to not forget doing this part, which is quite important. And you have then the development being finished. And then you have the automated scenarios, all of them, if possible, to execute them. If you don't spend too much time or monetary resources. And these are being executed first after the release. So this, after the development finishes here we are implying an internal release. So the automated scenarios are uh, the fastest here to be executed. And then you have by junior, but not only by junior. This is only an indication here to have some smoke checks. So you want to cover as much areas as possible. So you're doing smoke checks here. These are manual checks. And given the amount of time that you have left, you go here and you have the deep manual executions on high priority and with new slash updated features. So basically here you're diving deep. You're doing the most tricky scenarios, and you're bringing the most interesting findings here. You might not have time to manually execute all of them, but this is where um, prioritization comes to come into mind. But we're going to talk about this in next next slides more. For this, if you want to, the previous one that we just saw, to think it from the perspective of the QA, right? You have time to manage time per sprint. So let's say a 2 week sprint. So roughly, so the week starts here, kind of like, the development, a little bit before the development with this whole sprint planning kind of thing. And, let's say that you define the beginning of your sprint when the actual software engineering development is starting, or is about to start. And uh, and then it continues to the week 2. But for the previous week, You're doing this. You're doing the scenarios, and you're dealing with the business requirements. So this could be also the previous week or the week before. Um, so so basically here, this has the week here has some overlap with the whole execution. So then don't take this literally. You might have start smoke checking from week one actually, and sorry, and you have here yeah. So like this, what lost my train of thought here, but previous week, previous week of uh, the end of sprint, this business requirements and refinement is about writing the scenarios and also reading. So you see here at the end of the week two, you might have some findings, and some of the engineers will need to actually get involved of resolving those, or at least the project manager will deal how to manage those if they're going to be put to some later sprint and so on. But the end of the sprint also involves the developers reading the scenarios, as it's meant here. And again, here we want to focus that again the QA team usually is not uh, very large team, right? In comparison with software engineers, so there are many people, and there are a couple, usually a single couple, three, maximum four QA engineers working in a single project, let's say. And prioritization is like one of without prioritization, you just have dummy people clicking and hoping that something is going to come out of that. um, and the point is what you will need to subtract, what you're going to consider first of all as low priority. um, so you have to start thinking like, can the product survive those bugs? Let's say, I mean, that you resolve nothing, right? Uh, can the product survive those bugs? To have have the can the customers tolerate that, for example, or not? And so you have the developers having the gut instinct of what the complexity might be. So when we're trying to prioritize, you're asking the developers like, do you see like this like as a feature that it's worth doing like deep manual testing on that, or is this like very trivial? We should focus our energy somewhere else. And of course, like the QA, the QAs themselves, from their experience, they have built some instinct, they have built some experience, and they know where are more likely for defects to arise, and therefore they also contribute to the whole prioritization. and and this sometimes will be there can be conversations about that, and if you ask me, like, everyone should question what the prioritization will be for the scenarios and for the execution of those scenarios, and for writing the proper automation scenarios, because really scenarios can be infinite. You can have like many ideas for scenarios. If you try to a little bit stretch your imagination, you can have more and more and more and more scenarios, and you don't want to leave it to the chance to luck, right? You want to think what are you going to prioritize. um, and here I want to talk about that, how the prioritization sounds. Let me just remove myself from down here so you can see this table a little bit better. Sorry, but let me just minimize this and try to bring the slideshow here again. So, prioritization practically, right? So you have to think about your also your human resources here, right? That first of all, in the analysis phase, the more QAs you bring, you actually have more scenarios. The point is to also have someone read them at the end of the day. So you have, for example, one QA that analyzes 20 tickets. If you have two QAs, you can, let's say, you can analyze 40 tickets within the sprint. But the point is that if not all tickets are analyzed, it's okay because you prioritize appropriately. You put the high priority above. The developers read the scenario during implementation. The bugs were prevented where the high priority, the critical priority were, and you need to congratulate on that, right? And because you cannot do this otherwise, you might have the analysis might take forever. You might have many scenarios, and not all of them are going to bring value to you, business value. Not all of them are going to have the same pain if they are neglected, let's say, and some bug is lurking there, and the users will find them. Not the users might suffer some pain. They might tolerate some pain if your product, brings them true value. And second, like you have the automation phase, right? In the automation phase, again, this is, I guess, the most easy thing for someone to understand, right? Because in the automation phase, you have like one QA that generates 10 automation scenarios. You have two QAs that has 20 automation scenarios. And basically, um, not all tickets have a smoke scenario automated. I mean, that's fine. It's okay. You have some critical ones. I mean, I recall a lot of complex projects that were saying that, what are the most top 10 scenarios? 10 scenarios are not many. They're actually very few. In automation, you can have like, in terms of thousands of scenarios, actually. But the point is like, you start with this conversation, the first 10 most critical scenarios. And, the automation suite is going to grow. It's not going to shrink unless you're discarding huge parts of the business logic. So every QA that you bring, the more automation scenarios can be written. And again, you need to congratulate because you did the right prioritization. You picked the correct, the automated scenarios are optimized. They're not the same as the manual scenarios. Include a lot of steps inside, and they are there to emulate user actions and in a very fast way and bring findings. Because if you have like 1,000 automated scenarios without any findings, then sorry, your automation suite is useless. Actually, sorry for that. And the third part is the manual execution phase. Again, as we said, for the manual execution, you need to start to taking the breadth of it, right? You need to cover everything that's going to be delivered because you don't want to miss major stuff like major crashes. You have new implementation. You want to experience all the new features actually a little bit. So you are the first customer of the feature, right? And of the product, and you want to experience it. So you experience everything in this. Like that, you're doing some smoke checks, some sanity checks. You're not paying attention to some tricky scenarios. You're not spending your time with that because you first want to cover everything and then you go to do deeper executions. So this is how, again, only high priority tickets were checked, for example, and because you go through the smoke checks, but then let's say you only have for a couple of tickets or for 5 tickets only because of the time constraints, right? You only have time for 5 tickets to do deep manual executions. The point is that the engineers at some point should be trusted by the delivered. That I mean, if you have prioritized your tickets and you have some low priority tickets and the engineers cannot be trusted that they can deliver those without without major bugs and defects, then you have an overall problem, right? Because QA here is to supplement. It's not to be a shield, right? To the developer team is you took the first few more critical tickets, and these first few more critical tickets are actually uh, they were checked deeply. You had interesting findings about them, and some you couldn't test them in a deep way, but the engineers should be trusted. I mean, what would they do if QA team for some reason was not available? What would they do if QA team was being pulled to another project, for example, because of other concerns of the business to have a larger QA team over there? The engineers should be trusted. They should hold the responsibility of the quality when they're releasing it, either internally or also to production to the end users. And so that's all for this. And I hope you understand that prioritization is one of the top things that separates someone who is junior, and also prioritization at the end of the day. You have to build it as you go along, right? You cannot have a prioritization um, be you cannot have someone brought inside a new team and expect them to know the prioritization from the beginning. Let's say this red guy here on our screen is completely new to the team. He's completely senior. He has, let's say, he's the most senior QA person you can find in the world, but he's in a new business domain. He doesn't know what you really consider of higher priority. He can try to imagine this, so he will get there faster than others, but he's not sure. He should ask the question, and he should be allowed to put something as high priority, and the team will need to come back and tell him kindly that this is not a high priority for these and these reasons. Or the other way around, he might think that something is of low priority, and the team will need to come back and explain to him or her that this is not of low priority because it can affect those users, because we have these numbers in from business intelligence analytics that show that this is very important. So this pack should be raised from minor to major, for example. So that was all. This was George Grigoropoulos about leave cares behind and prioritize, and thanks a lot for your time and watching this.